Welcome to episode 4 of the Dynasty Dad Podcast. My name is Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty_DadFF. And I'm excited to announce we have our first guest on today. And I want to welcome to the show the boss, the founder, the co-host of the Dynasty Happy Hour, Tyler Gunther. How you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. We were talking beforehand. I mean, this is the most ginger you can get on one podcast, so good thing we're recording at nighttime.
We had to get a permit, so I mean, we're only allowed about 30 minutes, and like I told him, I'm under fluorescent lights, so 30 minutes is going to be long overdue. There's a good chance I'm going to leave burnt.
See, I don't think people realize what it's like trying to go to the beach and do those kind of things. But so why don't you tell the listeners, how you got your start in fantasy football and how it's progressed into obviously building what you have at Dynasty Happy Hour at this point?
Yeah, I joined a Dynasty League in 2011. It was Julio's rookie year. And I remember having a friend. I love Madden. I think all Dynasty players love Madden. And I love Madden. I love the team build aspect. And all I did in Madden was trade. Like that. I did off-season trade. And then it was just like boring.
I know my buddies used to harass me about that. You're just on there for hours making trades, and they're like with a computer system that was just accepting anything anyways. But that's kind of how we all got that going. Yeah,
that's true. And my buddy came up to me. I was doing redraft for a little bit. He goes, "Hey, you got to try this Dynasty thing." And I said, "I don't know. I'm not big in the fantasy." And he goes, "Just try it." So I decided to join the league, and the rest is history. I mean, I joined. I took over an orphan. It sucked. I mean, this team was bad. It was not good. And then, I built it, won a championship in 2015. And that's when I decided, I love trading. And I think I've kind of got trading down. I would love to share my strategy with people. And that's when I joined Dynasty Nerds, started writing for them. Then they took a chance on me with ranking and being a bigger part of the team. And I'm forever grateful for Rich for that and give me a chance to grow with them. And I still remember getting shouted out by Rich on the podcast. And I just thought it was I text my buddy too, who had me join this Dynasty League. I said, dude, listen to this week's episode of Dynasty Nerds, because it was a staple for him too. And he's just like, no way. And I had my name said, I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah. No, that's a special feeling. I remember the first time I was like, I sent in even a listener question to Dynasty Trade Calculator, and they read my name, and I'm like, yo, kids, come over here. You got to check us out. They actually said my name, and it's like, that's one thing I'm really big on at Dynasty Refinery and doing the Dynasty Dad podcast is giving people shout outs when they send their listener questions and, say their actual name and give them a little bit, because we're all in this, Dynasty community together. I'm glad you brought up 2015, because that's when I actually got my start, and my first league was with you, and I remember the Dynasty professor got me into Dynasty, and we were in a bunch of, redraft leagues together, and he's like, you got to try this, man. He's like, you're good at this. And, I got into that league, and I just remember just being blown away, because it was you and Chris Whitman and John Bosch, and it was almost all writers. And I was in there, and it was like the group chat was wild, being my first, Dynasty startup. You guys made like 1,000 trades, and I'm like, yo, I don't know where I should be with this. I was the new kid on the block. And I remember I told a story on Goat District the other day. I remember my sofa actually like almost caught on fire, because my kids were like pushed it right up against the sofa, and I'm like trying to make some Dynasty trades here. And it was a blast, and I enjoyed being part of that process. And, I going from there to now, I got to thank you for, giving me a shot to write over at Dynasty Happy Hour and kind of, giving me a shout out. And I appreciate those kind of things, because now I'm kind of doing that to a new group. So it's just the Dynasty community is phenomenal at that. I mean, everybody building each other up and, making they're not even worried about your work versus their work. It's just building it up as a community. And I love it.
Yeah. I think what a lot of people are getting better at too is if you have a certain take, a lot of people are getting really good at not bashing it. Okay, I understand. And the thing I told a friend of mine at work yesterday, and I said, the thing about Dynasty is you have to, like, in order to be solidified, is you have to have your guys. Like, if you're in a league with people got to look at you and be like, that's Tyler's guy. Like, Tyler loves this guy. I'm not getting him off his team. Like, once you're in that kind of realm, like when people know your dudes, it it kind of feels like, okay, you have a flag planted on people, and like that kind of makes you like, okay, he's standing by it, he's wrong, he's right, he's standing by his guy. And I think that's what everybody needs to have in today's industry is like, you're in a league with people that people look at you and like, okay, that's your guy. Like DeAndre Swift this year. Hey, Tyler's going to draft DeAndre Swift at 103. If I want him, I got to get him at 102. And nobody's going to do that. So, like, it's okay to dip your toe in the water and take a chance on a player that you actually like. Yeah. If it doesn't pan out, man up. Admit to your choice. Admit that you're wrong, unless it's Corey Clement. But other than that, like,
I do remember that. Yeah.
Admit that you're wrong. Hey, Miles Sanders is hurt. Corey Clement has a chance.
he's the RB3 there. You know, like we just got to our 10,000th downloaded Dynasty Refinery. And that's something that I'm really into now is like in the beginning, when you first do it, you're like, well, I got to make sure I'm kind of close to everybody else. And then you're like, no, you know, you got to stay true to your heart. You got to do what your guys are. You got to plant your flags on your guys. And, you know, and that's when you know, you're actually starting to progress and do some things. And we're going to talk about some running backs here. We're going to plant our flags on. But before we do that, this is the Dynasty Dad Pod, you know, and I wanted you to be my first guest because I know, you know, you have 3 kids. And why don't you tell me a little bit about, you know, what your particular experience with dad life and how that pertains to football and mixing in your career and, you know, a little bit of that backstory.
Well, I had kids. We decided we sold them. We would sell them. We had some housework we had to do. So we took the money. We ran, and yeah. So we're gonna
get money on that. I got 4, so I mean, if the money's right,
I mean, it's like tax returns. You get like 1,000 per kid. No. In all honesty, my kids are awesome. I love them. I actually just got in my daughter's room like 15 minutes ago because we're laughing and joking around when I was laying her down, and it's those things that it may be hard. Like during the day, they're not listening, they're not doing these things, but man, when you get one-on-one with a kid, it's like they're a different kid altogether because they're not trying to impress their sibling, trying to get attention. It's just like full throttle, all them, and it's awesome.
Yeah, no, I think that's the hardest thing when you have, I mean, I have 4 and it's like, it's a different dynamic when all 4 of them are there because they all want dad's attention. You know, the 13-year-old wants me to play Fortnite. The 7-year-old wants me to, you know, play Spider-Man toys, and you're trying to be super dad, bounce all over the place. But it's those one-on-one experiences that like they stick out in your mind, they stick out in your heart, and it's like that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and honestly, I wouldn't be able to do this without my wife. I mean, there's every Sunday I work evenings, so from 5 p.m. till 1:30 a.m. during the week I work, and it saves us on daycare, which is huge. Yeah. I mean, we save thousands upon thousands of dollars just doing this. It sucks for me because I get 5 hours of sleep at most per weekday, but I think I've gotten used to that. I think I look older than what I actually am, but I feel like I'm getting used to it. My time to bounce back comes because I hear from other dads that their kids are older. They say, you'll get your time. You'll get, you know, you'll kind of recover after that initial time. So
yeah. It's
go
true
ahead.
because when I know when you and Chris were forming Dynasty Happy Hour, you know, when I got in that first league, and to me it was like, man, I can't do those kind of things because my kids were all super young at that age. And now that they're getting a little bit older, you actually do get to sleep a little bit, you know, and it's like a nice experience. You actually get to go to bed and you don't have to be waking up every couple hours. But yeah, that's fantastic. You know, I got my draft board here behind me, and on my 4 kids, we do a family draft, you know, and it's going to happen actually this Friday, and they all put on their jerseys. We order pizza, you know, we do it like the guys, and they absolutely love playing fantasy football. And it's like, they're growing with it. You know, they understand that dad's doing a podcast now, and they like, you know, partaking in those kind of things. And
then when you pass, they can fight over your dynasty teams.
That's right.
I remember
I remember you talking about that with Wills, and I was joking around with my kids. I'm like, listen, I got 15 teams. You know, these are the ones that you get. These are, I mean, there's some money makers here. You know what I mean? So I'm making sure this doesn't go to my ex-wife. This is going to you guys. So we'll turn those teams
true.
over.
No, that's completely true, because if you got a dominant team, like I've got a home league team that I'm consistent in the championship. I've been there the past 3 years, and so whatever kid is best. I mean, my son my son can be a little devil sometimes. So my oldest so far is in the lead. So whoever wants it can get it. But yeah, that's what I hope. If my son doesn't or my daughter doesn't get into it, oh well. But I mean, it's like every fantasy player's dream to have their kid get into the quote unquote family business.
Right. Yeah, it's like LeBron waiting for his kid to come in. We're just waiting for our kids to get into our dynasty league. A little bit
Yes.
smaller scale there, you know. But my oldest has won it, all 4 years we played. But last year, my youngest actually won it, and now they're starting to come to me for advice. It's hilarious, they're like, who do we take here? These are the guys. And I was FaceTiming them before I got on here with you, and my son's like, I know who I'm taking with my first pick. So it's just a lot of fun.
It's kind of funny because it's a redraft, and we're mainly dynasty. But my one redraft I have, it's awesome. Last night, my buddy I work with, he's the commissioner, and he's like, I got to randomize a draft order, and he's going on a trip today. So last night he decided to do it. And after he did it, he just kind of stared at me from across the room and just like with this glare. And I go, I got 101, didn't I? And he goes, yes, I won it last year too. So I'm like, oh, yes. And I'm actually going to come to you for advice. I need to keep 2 players. I got Miles Sanders, Tyreek Hill, and Julio Jones that I'm deciding between to keep. Who do I keep?
Miles Sanders for sure. It's full PPR, obviously.
And I have 101, so Clyde Edwards-Helaire to me is the 101 pick in this draft.
Yeah, so
because
for me,
24 keepers.
I'm pounding those running backs early. Like all of my redraft philosophy and my Scott Fishbowl, I went running back early, and I love Julio and Tyreek, and I think that would separate you a little bit. I feel like Julio Jones is going to ball out this year. The stats that he put up, and then 258 vacated targets in Atlanta. You can't really go wrong with any of those. But for me, I would say Miles Sanders and Julio.
Yeah, that's actually what my choice is. And then with the Miles Sanders injury, it kind of like made me think, is he going to be? No, I got to stick with it because having Miles Sanders and Clyde Edwards-Helaire as my running backs will be pretty nice.
Yeah, my redraft league. I've been in the championship 6 of the last 7 years, including 5 straight losses. They all harass me because I do the podcast and do all the extra stuff, and I've lost 6 of the last 7 championships. Is there anything and then I lose every year?
There's nothing worse than being in a home league, making the championship, or even being dead last.
Yeah.
And then having people come after you and be like, I thought you did a podcast. I thought you knew what you were talking about.
Yeah. The league is 19 years old, right? I've missed the playoffs once. And that was when I had my divorce, and let's say it wasn't the best draft, and I've been in the championship 14 years. So you think they'd have a little bit of respect, but no, every time it's like, you got the podcast, you write, you don't even win the league. I'm like, I come in second every year.
Yeah. No, speaking of worst drafts, there was one time I got into a fantasy league, and then I didn't even realize, I thought the draft was supposed to be for some reason I was Eastern time thinking, and I'm up here in Minnesota. So I'm sitting here thinking, God, the draft starts in like 30 minutes, and everybody's like chatting in the draft room chat. I'm like, what the hell? I've drafted 2 Jaguars receivers. Like
that's never a good
Sims.
Start.
What is it? Something Sims. Do you remember him?
Wait.
He had like one big year and then just kept getting hurt and never really panned out.
Okay.
Yeah, I drafted him. There's one. I think I drafted Chad Ochocinco or Hujmanzada when he was like falling apart. Oh God, it was the worst. We were 4 rounds in, and I had to recover completely, and then probably by like week 4, I'm like, it's a lost cause. Nothing can save this team.
Speaking of saving your team, I want to talk about some running backs here, guys, so we can plant our flags on and kind of talk about some things. After the obvious names at the top, after Saquon and Christian McCaffrey, Zeke, and Kamara and Mixon, I want you to break down. We're going to talk about some of the crucial names here for 2020, not just for Dynasty, but for redraft. And let me know what you think of their prospects for this year, and obviously the value that they have in Dynasty, because we are both, Dynasty minds. The first one, you got him in the Dynasty Happy Hour Staff League, and I wish I had more shares of him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going at the 105, according to DLF ADP. Is that worth it to you? Is that we have Kareem Hunt at the pinnacle of Kareem Hunt. He went at 108 after 1,800 yards, 13 touchdowns, 60 receptions. Is Clyde Edwards-Helaire worth the 105? And what are you doing with him? Where would you be willing to take him in redraft?
The 105 is tough for me. And God, I mean, you're pretty much paying for ceiling there. You're hoping that he's Saquon, because like Saquon was going 112 in his rookie year. So yeah, you're pretty much paying for Edwards-Helaire to pan out, because if he does pan out, he ain't moving up because these other guys are studs. I mean, he might make it to 3, but you're not getting by McCaffrey. You're not getting by Barkley.
Nope.
That ain't happening. Jonathan Taylor, I'd rather go like wide receiver than Taylor in the second or something like that. But yeah, 105 is way too expensive in ADP for Edwards-Helaire for me. I think in our staff league, I got him in the 5th round. I think middle of the 5th round is where I got him. And that was quite a reach for me. I was like sitting there, I'm like, God, I mean, what if he doesn't even start? I mean, I'm taking a huge risk here. And this was before NFL draft. And he was like my running back 5. So yeah, when he went to the Chiefs in the 1st round, it was a huge win. But yeah, just I don't think 105 is worth it. I'd rather look at players like I'd rather have Eckler in the 2nd or 3rd round, because I mean he's safe. So yeah, I think if I have the choice of Clyde Edwards-Helaire or say it's a super flex, if I can get Lamar Jackson or Mahomes or like Kyler Murray, I'd probably rather have than Edwards-Helaire right now.
I'm glad, because that's what I've been saying to everybody. I mean, it's a matter of, if you're at that spot, it's about trading back, or maybe even moving up just a little bit to make sure you get one of those guys, because Edwards-Helaire is going at his ceiling. I had Eitan Mosey on at Dynasty Refinery before the NFL draft, and we did a mock, and I got him at 201 before he went to the Chiefs. And moving a guy up that much, I mean, DeAndre Swift was up there at the 101. If he goes to the Chiefs, it would have been pure pandemonium. Now we get Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and they put him into that spot. Where are you comfortable taking him in a redraft? We got some redraft listeners in here.
Well, I got an argument with a guy on Twitter today about taking him at my pick at 101, and he's like, "Are you crazy?" And I said, "No, because in a redraft, if he's there at 106, I'm taking him." And yeah, at 106, I think 106 in a redraft, I think that is the sweet spot for me, because you get past the big 5 running backs. I think Kamara I'd rather have, maybe, but I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire to me is he's gonna catch a lot of passes. He's going to get the ball a lot. I do think they will distribute it to other people, but I think Edwards-Helaire is the guy.
I love it. Love it. The next guy, and I want to break down these names, because these are the guys that are going to win you your championship. Everybody talks about those big 5, but right now, Josh Jacobs, says he wants to have 60 receptions this year, finished in the top 10 as a rookie in pretty much every statistical category.
I don't think it matters with him. I mean, he's so good. Like he could catch 30 passes, and I think he could almost win the rushing title. Like, he's that good.
I mean, he was number 1 in Pro Football Focus for the elusive rate. I mean, everything with Josh Jacobs. I just got off the Dynasty Refinery, and I was saying there is a top 5 to 8 upside with Josh Jacobs that, people aren't really paying attention to it. What he came out in college, when he came out, it was his pass catching ability that separated him. Everybody was comparing him to that. And I feel like the Raiders year 1 really just held him back a little bit just to keep him in check. He had the shoulder injury. Josh Jacobs right now, I mean, where do you taking him as far as Dynasty? What kind of value do you see? And where would you be comfortable taking him in redraft?
Dynasty, I would probably take him early 2nd, because he, like, I don't want to take it from Andy Holloway, but I completely agree with him. And Josh Jacobs is a guy that can end up being a top 5 running back next year in the draft because of what he produces. I mean, we saw nothing but positive from him in his rookie year. I mean, he had a couple injury hiccups, but every time he touched the ball, it seemed like he was gaining 5 yards or more. And that's what you want to see out of running back. And I don't think the line for the Raiders was that great, but it was good enough. So if their line even gets a smidge better, yeah, I mean, Jacobs is going to eat. They don't have Washington there anymore. They do have Rashard still, but they do have Lynn Bowden, which I don't think he's going to be strictly a running back. They're going to use him all over. He's a weapon. So yeah, I think it's wheels up for Jacobs, and I love his dynasty outlook. He's so young. He proved everything you want to see. People thought he couldn't hold a full workload, but you know what? That dude can hold a full workload. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Jacobs would be up there with Clyde Edwards-Helaire for me in dynasty. And like, if I had a choice between the two, it's tough because Jacobs is a better pure runner But Edwards-Helaire, I mean, he's probably a better pass catcher and a better offense. So, I mean, what are you going to choose? The more talent or the better situation, but still talented?
Yeah, I'm telling everybody to right now trade back. If you have I really believe that when running backs get to that age where we're looking at Dalvin Cook and Joe Mixon and Alvin Kamara, if you can trade back and get some extra value and take Josh Jacobs, I mean, the sky is up there, and you're going to reset the clock by 4 or 5 years. And I was looking today. The average NFL team was 59% if they were rushing from the 1 yard line and punching it in. The Raiders were at 12% last year. You have to feel like there's some positive regression there. He is the guy that's going to get the red zone carries. And if he gets those 3 extra receptions a game that he was talking about, you're looking at he would have finished in the top 5 if he had those 60 receptions. I feel like he's a great value right now. And he's my guy everywhere that I'm trying to tell everybody to go get.
Yeah.
The next one's the other guy. He's the jersey that's right behind me. And these are the 3 guys that are real difficult for me to separate. And I know we did the Dynasty Happy Hour versus Dynasty Nerds draft, and you took Miles Sanders in that second round. He was going to RB7 in July ADP. Now he's going RB11. Is this an overcorrection? Is this, the fantasy community got too excited and they're correcting themselves? Or does he really belong? Where do you see him more, in that RB7 or RB11 range?
I think it's rookies coming in. I mean, you got to look at people are in love with Jonathan Taylor. I mean, Jonathan Taylor is the next Zeke to everybody. And I mean, I'm going to tell you, like, I love Jonathan Taylor, but I have a fear of Wisconsin running backs. I was not a fan of Melvin Gordon. I was not a fan of Monte Ball. Like, their offensive line in the Big Ten is insane. I watch a lot of Big Ten up here, and Wisconsin's offensive line all the time is insane. Taylor's very talented, but he was a 3-star guy coming into college. So, I mean, he's worked his tail off to be as good as he is. So the natural ability isn't there for me. Like, I mean, a 5-star, you got to be like God's gift. And that, like, DeAndre Swift has this unnatural ability other players don't have. Jonathan Taylor, he's got some sweet feet in the holes. I mean, he's got good vision, and that can help. I mean, Devonta Freeman was written off for dead in college, and he came in, and his vision was insane in his burst. I mean, you have 2 great qualities. You can make it as a running back, and Jonathan Taylor, I mean, he could rush for 1,200 yards his rookie year. Yeah, sure. But exactly, you got Marlon Mack.
Yeah, I love, and the offensive line, going into 2020 is projected as the number 1 offensive line. They were number 2 last year. And you had said something about, DeAndre Swift. I love Jonathan Taylor, at the price there, but is there a better dynasty value right now than DeAndre Swift? We keep telling the narrative that he goes there, and I mean, he was the
maybe Cam Akers.
Yeah,
because I mean, people hate Akers, but you know what it's going to take? And I told my friend at work last night, we watched the episode 2 of Hard Knocks. I said, wait for the episode to come out with Cam Akers, and his value is going to go through the roof.
I moved him up because of that visor.
I mean, just even watching the clips, like him shooting back and forth, Jalen Ramsey in pass pro. Like, Jalen Ramsey went up against him in pass pro, and Akers, like, Ramsey's like, I got him. Akers pushed him aside and says, no, I got you. And then Ramsey's just like back and forth. Like, he's not taking any crap. Akers is a very talented player.
Yeah, and that's a 5-star recruit right there. I mean, obviously the number 1 recruit coming in, and people start telling themselves narratives. They're telling themselves a narrative that Kerryon Johnson's there and Detroit doesn't know how to run the ball, but DeAndre Swift
has no legs. Like,
he's going to be injured.
That brace was nasty looking. I even told my friend, I said, I'm so happy I'm on DeAndre Swift because that brace looked like he didn't even have a real leg.
Well, and I talked to my friend who's a doctor, and he said braces like that aren't to prevent injuries. It's just for comfort. It's just for him to stabilize that knee and more for a mental stability, which, as far as getting injured, that's something that really can play a toll there. But people also tell themselves, obviously the narrative with Cam Akers that Henderson's going to be getting the ball and Malcolm Brown, and the best running back's going to eat, in those situations.
The worst one is his vision. I mean, I would be panicking too if I was getting hit 3 yards behind the line, and sometimes even before I got the ball. Akers, I mean, the plays he made on his own were nuts. And Akers, if he has any kind of an offensive line, which I think Whitworth, from what I'm seeing on Hard Knocks, he's teaching Austin Corbett, who's still a very young player and a very highly drafted interior lineman. he has room to grow. Their offensive line can get better because honestly, it probably couldn't have gotten worse from last year with Todd Gurley and his inefficiencies. But Akers, man, I mean, he's a great pass catcher, and Malcolm Brown is not the pass catcher.
No,
Darrell Henderson is not the pass catcher. It's going to be Akers. And in fantasy, if you can catch 30 to 50 balls your rookie year, you're going to produce. And Akers is going to have, I think, 150 plus carries, and that's going to make a difference. Akers is going to be a very good running back. Swift, I think, he's going to catch, I think, 70 balls. I would not be shocked. They're going to use him in that Kamara role, a James White role, which is huge. And you know what's going to happen? Kerryon's going to get hurt. They're going to say, let's give this DeAndre Swift guy 10 more carries. And then they're going to be like, wow, this guy is our guy.
I know. I scooped him up in every league I wasn't with you. You know, I mean, you were taking him ahead of me, and I got him at 107. I got him at 108 in the draft, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. You know, the value that's there. I mean, the one draft, the guy took Keyshawn Vaughn over him, and I'm like, come on. Like, how do you have that kind of – yeah. The other two are a little bit more polarizing here. The guys I want to talk about, Kenyon Drake, who obviously, you know, once he got traded to Arizona, he balled out. And Austin Eckler, I'm seeing a lot of bouncing back and forth, but he finishes the RB3 last year. I saw a stat on Twitter today. If you take away 50 receptions from him, he still finished as the RB7. And in redraft, he's going at RB13, which is just blows my mind. What do you think of those two running backs?
So you said Drake and who else?
Austin Eckler.
Oh, I love Eckler. I'm actually buying at his price right now because I think people are starting to fall off on him and thinking, you know, that it's going to be Jackson or it's going to be Kelly coming in. But no, I love Eckler's value. He's one of those guys that I think is going to last in the league. And if you can get 70 catches from a player, he's going to be a good RB2 for your team. I mean, if you're in PPR and you get 70 catches, think of that for a wide receiver. You're very happy if that's a receiver. And Eckler catches 70 balls, rushing the ball. Like, I'd be more than happy with him having 150, like 120 to 150 rushes because he's going to produce. He's a big game guy or big play guy. He's so quick at just wheel routes. He's so good at pass catching. And they showed his tape on Hard Knocks last night and showed him as a rookie. And he's gotten so much better as a player from his rookie year.
Because he used to be that guy you got thrown in on a trade. You know, you get him for a second-round pick because he was an afterthought with Melvin Gordon, but he was always catching passes. And now he's gotten bigger. I mean, obviously the pictures of him, the dude's yoked, you know, and he's just making people miss in the open field. And I know we all kind of laughed when Stompy took him at 208, but I'm comfortable taking him in the early third now. I mean, because he's going to be around for a while. You know, he's the type of running back who's not just a flash in the pan. He's going to be catching passes for years. And I was digging deep here. And like, if you take away the rushing stats, Christian McCaffrey would have finished as the wide receiver 13 this year. And Austin Eckler would have finished as the wide receiver 17. So you're getting an RB1 and a wide receiver 1. You can't pass on that.
Yeah, no, I'm Eckler's 24 still. He'll be 25. Yeah, he's probably got a good 4 or 5 more years in the league. And for a running back, that's a lifetime.
Yeah, for sure. And the other one was Kenyon Drake. The only, you know, a lot of people are really high on Kenyon Drake, and a lot of people are really out on Kenyon Drake. You know, my buddy got me a cameo of him wishing me a happy Father's Day, which I thought was super cool. But you know, where do you see Kenyon Drake? He's very polarizing in the Twitter community, and some people swear that he has RB1 upside and he's the guy, and other people are like, I'm fading him completely.
I mean, the only thing that worries me is his age and injury history. People forget that he's a very often injured player. In Miami, he was injured a lot. Alabama, he was never healthy. That's the reason why you really saw the full Kenyon Drake, is because he's so injured. And Drake is a very talented player, and he's definitely changed his game a little bit. In college, he was a speed guy, a big play guy, but he's learned to break more tackles and play smarter, be more patient. And I liked what I saw last year. And if he's in this offense for 3 more years, I mean, Drake will be worth where he's going. But if he only is in this 1-year deal and then becomes a free agent, I mean, I like Chase Edmonds a lot. I think he's a good running back. And same thing. He's a very often injured player. But when he's healthy, he's outstanding.
Well, yeah, and
And
Kingsbury came out today and said that this isn't going to be Chase Edmonds as just a backup role. They plan on using him quite a bit.
oh yeah,
And I mean, I feel like he is the biggest buy out of this. I was talking about at the end here, kind of a guy to plant a flag on, but you can get him outside the top 40 right now. And he has an opportunity where if Drake, like you said, gets injured, I mean, Edmonds is going to take over and could win that job, and this is an offense that you want players in there. I think with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins and the way Kingsbury's doing things, it's going to be a fun offense.
yeah. No, I completely agree. And like I said, if Drake's in this offense, they get him long term. Yeah, he's worth the price. But I don't know about another team because I think he fits perfect with this team. And yeah, it'll be interesting if he goes into free agency next year to see if he lands with a team like Jacksonville. Like if he goes to Jacksonville, how much is that going to fall and just decrease his value?
Yeah,
Probably a ton.
I look at it very similar to like Derrick Henry's situation is you're not willing to buy until they get the contract. And then you're like,
Yeah.
they fit perfectly into that scenario, but they don't necessarily fit in other situations. And I mean, like I said, we did our deep dive for stats, but I mean, the Derrick Henry stat that blew my mind, including the playoffs, 1,688 yards after contact this year. 82% of his yards were after contact. I mean, that blew my mind when I found that. I mean, that's just
It's
insane.
because he got hit behind the line
Every time.
and then he just takes off. He's like if you slap a bull in the ass. I mean, he's just gonna start running downhill.
Exactly. So the next part I want to talk about, and this is the part where we got a little interactive here with Twitter, is just values of the veteran running backs. When I first started in Dynasty in 2015, it was all about get those wide receivers early, and some people still prescribe to that, and they're willing to buy
It's
some
so
running
weird
backs
to think about that. Like
I know,
it was
all
all receivers.
Right. It was OBJ, it was Evans, it was all those guys. But now those guys are older, and now we're waiting for that next crop of the DJ Moores and the AJ Browns to work themselves into that scenario. But if you still prescribe to that, let's talk about some running backs here that you can add for potentially a late first and can really take your dynasty team over the top and win some of them championships, because that's what it's all about. I know a lot of people hold on to those late first, but I did a Twitter poll and just kind of asking where these guys fell. We're going to talk about the poll a little bit, and then we'll talk about, what kind of outlook you have for them. The first one is Leonard Fournette. 48% of you guys said that you're willing to spend a mid first, 38% a late first, 14% said they would not even give a first round pick for Leonard Fournette. Out of, the running back ones of the last 3 years, there's only 3 guys that have been RB1s back to back, and it's Fournette, Kamara, and Zeke. And Kamara and Zeke are going top 5 to 7. And you can get Leonard Fournette in the 3rd, 4th round. I mean, I did the FFPC. I got him in the 5th. Talk to me about Leonard Fournette. Is that a guy you're willing to buy for a contender? Obviously with the touchy situation there in Jacksonville, is he worth that kind of money to you?
Oh God, I don't think so. I'm not a Fournette guy. I had him. I had one share of him and I traded it because he's one of those players I don't like owning. Like Odell Beckham is another player where he's a very talented player. I hate owning him because the game you don't start him, he puts up 8 points. The game the game you do start him, he puts up 8. The game you don't, he puts up 48. And then
I'm happy to sell my last share of Odell Beckham. In the rookie draft, I got DeAndre Swift in a first for Odell Beckham, and I was like smash accept on that one.
Yeah, that's a great trade. And it's kind of like that with Fournette because I mean, his pass catching's there, but he's not a good pass catcher, and the stats prove it. He's not a great pass catcher. I mean, it's like catch the pass, then what, 3-4 yards?
Yeah.
Like he doesn't go anywhere, and it could be the offense.
It was 4th in targets last year, and he's like the only running back. Like there was 7 running backs in the last 10 years that got the kind of workload that he did with the 250 plus carries and the 100 plus targets, and they all finished RB1, RB2, or the worst other than him was RB5, and he finished at RB7 or RB9 depending on league format with that much usage. I mean,
and he was super talented in college, but I just think the lower body injuries are really taking a toll on him. His running style taking a toll on him. So with me, Fournette is definitely an avoid. He's a guy that I don't want any part of. If I'm taking that first rounder, I'm going to take one of those young receivers. Give me a guy like Jefferson or Rager, and I'll wait on him because I think you could get more for Fournette. So I like the poll, but I'm gonna have to decide on that. If it was me personally, I would look elsewhere for a running back.
Yeah. This is the reason I put the poll out there. And I want to do like, well, let's think about it as all the rookie drafts are done. And we're talking about, you got a 2021 first here. And it's a matter
Okay.
of in season, all of these guys, their value is going to be the most expensive. We know that running back veterans in season. If you're going to flip them, it's in season. It's not now. You're not
especially
trying to
this
do that.
year.
Exactly.
I mean, somebody drops down with COVID, and they're out for 3-4 weeks. Your RB2, your flex starter at running back is gone. Like, say you got bye weeks coming up, and you're like, crap, I have nobody. Like that. You're gonna be able to sell.
I'm telling people running backs early and often, and get those IR stash spots on there for your running backs because, buddy of mine in our redraft, he's like, I'm taking Zeke 101 because he already got COVID. And I'm like, whoa, you can't take him over McCaffrey just because we don't even know about COVID if that's something you cannot get again. But, that's a great point. So we're just trying to say, if you had this pick, is this a guy you're willing to invest in? For you, Fournette is a guy that you're fading completely. Twitter says 48% would sell for a mid first. So if you guys can get a mid first for Leonard Fournette, I'm all about that. I'd be
mid first. In this year's class coming up, I mean, you got every single stud receiver that was going to be a highly drafted player. They're coming out. I mean, people are already coming out saying I'm skipping out 2020 college no matter what happens, and I'm going to train for the NFL draft. I mean, you got studs coming out for receivers.
People are willing to. I keep seeing it on Twitter. People are like, "Well, I'm a little worried about the 2021 class because there's no NCAA season. I'm going to start moving them picks." Do not do that, guys. I mean, these guys are studs that are coming out. I mean, you got Chase and Bateman and obviously Lawrence. I mean, Etienne, Chuba. There's so many great players coming out this year.
I would trade every running back but Swift, Taylor, and Edwards-Helaire for Jamar Chase next year. Like, that's how good Jamar Chase is.
I'm so excited for him. So excited. The next guy we're going to talk about is Chris Carson. So 15% of you guys are said you're willing to pay a mid first. And by the way, I'm selling that all day. 50% said late first. 35% are saying less than a first round pick. When Chris Carson's on the field, he's a top 10 running back for sure. The fumbles are a bit of a worry. Are you willing to pay? Let's go with, it looks like a late first is what 50% of people are saying. What would you pay for Chris Carson on a contender?
On a contender, I'd probably go early second, but once again, it's the same as Fournette. They're pretty much the same player for me, except I think Carson might be more electric, and that's crazy to say because he was a 6th round, 7th round pick. Carson is a bulldozer. He does not care about his body, and it shows with his injury history.
Yeah, he's not long for the league. I mean, that part's obvious, but there isn't much else there. I mean, Hyde's the backup now. Hopefully, you get Penny coming off the pup. DJ Dallas. Yeah, there's a lot of guys there that just not quite proven, but Carson, when he's on the field, puts up numbers. It's just a matter of you're going to be paying a first round pick for a guy who could be out of a job. I mean, those fumbles are really starting to add up.
Yeah, and I mean, Hyde is like the new Fred Jackson. And it's like wherever he goes, he's just going to produce just enough to annoy you. So, yeah, I would not sleep on Hyde being there and just be like, oh, Carson's fine. I think they're going to use Hyde more than we think because I think they like Carson. They want him to stay healthy and they want him to produce. So, I think Carson's a guy who needs volume, and I think his volume is going to go down even if it's just a tad. It still makes a difference for Chris Carson. So, if I can get Carson for an early second, yeah, I'd be all about that, especially on a contender.
Yeah, and I love putting these out there for Twitter because it gives you an idea of what people are willing. I mean, if you say 50% are willing to give a late first,
you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm on mute. No,
I can't hear you.
What just happened? You can't hear me at all? Can you hear me now? How about now? Can you hear me?
No.
What the heck happened? Hold on a second.
It might have been me.
Oh, wait. You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, I was like, I didn't do anything. I was going to blame my girlfriend. Hey, keep it down over there. No. I love you. All right. So like I said, I like to take these Twitter polls and I like to look at them. I mean, if 15% of the people are willing to pay a mid first, I'm doing that all day. 50% are paying a late first, I'm doing that. But, it kind of gives you an idea of both ends, what you can possibly get for a guy or what you can possibly buy him for, so you want to be on those ends. The next guy we might argue a little bit here, Todd Gurley is looking at, Only 12% of people are willing to pay a mid, 56% are late, 32% surprisingly won't even pay a first round pick for Todd Gurley. I know you're an Atlanta fan. I think he's absolutely going to eat this year with just an extreme workload because he's on a 1-year deal. They're not worried about the knee as much. What do you think? What do you think of Todd Gurley this year? You know, I'm personally excited.
I just want him to be healthy because if he's healthy, he's going to destroy this year. He's going to win championships. The issue is his legs might just be 80 years old. Like he could have the half of what the old guy from Family Guy is, like the old creepy. Yeah, just it's so confusing because you hear stories like Gurley's legs are not great, and then you hear like, oh, he's 100%, he's doing great in walkthroughs. It's so tough because it can win you a league, and the thing is are you going to take the chance? I have bought Gurley for like 2 seconds in a home league because people hear this news and they'll jump on off board, and I bought him in a couple places just because I want to root for him because he's on my team. I know I've got a year or two left with him. I didn't pay much for him, but I mean, if I can give a second rounder in 2021 and a second rounder in 2022, I'd be more than happy to do that because I think the production will be there because I don't think Brian Hill is going to also vulture anything from him if he's healthy. I don't think Ito Smith is. There's going to be value with Todd Gurley, and honestly, if you're going to find that value in the next 2 years, second rounders, I mean, you are way better at this than I am because if you can find players that are going to win you a title potentially, I need to find a new hobby.
Yeah, you can't find that kind of hit rate like you're going to get with Todd Gurley. And it may not be sexy. It might not be exciting like it was last year, but he finished the RB13 last year. And I brought him for the 111 on a championship run because I lost Jacobs to injury. And I was like, I'm going to, go with Gurley. And I'm still happy. I mean, if I can get RB13 and I can get a potential RB1 again this year from him for a late first, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, so I'll hit some of these other ones and probably not get into every single percentage here, but looks like split the whole way across the board on Melvin Gordon, 33% almost the whole way across between mid to late to early second. What would you pay for Melvin Gordon? It seems like, I mean, from the poll, people are much higher on Melvin Gordon than Todd Gurley, which surprises me.
I'd give a mid second for Melvin Gordon. The issue is, I mean, what I legit thought of right when he went there. And what I think when everybody goes to Denver, how are you going to do with that air? Because that air makes a difference. And Melvin Gordon is not doing well with the air. And I mean, you got to remember that there's a lot of players in the league that have sickle cell potentially, or they just can't handle the pressure of the air up there.
Yeah.
So Melvin Gordon could be a guy that gets 15 touches a game. And I mean, for Melvin Gordon, will that do it? No. I think it's going to be more of a split than we think because Melvin Gordon's going to get a lot more tired than we're used to, and that can affect him. So yeah, I'd say mid to late second for me.
Yeah, it's going to favor Lindsey because he's used to it a little bit more, and everybody feels like it's going to be like a 70-30, and I feel like we could be in for a 60-40 type split. So I like that. The news came out today on Le'Veon Bell that Adam Gase wants to lighten his load, and Le'Veon Bell last year needed that load. I mean, that was what it was. It was all volume. 42% said they're willing to pay a late first, 50% willing to pay a second on a contender. What are you thinking about Lev Bell? And man, does this seem like talking about guys like Todd Gurley and Le'Veon Bell for second round picks, but it seems like where they belong.
Yeah, I'd give a second for Lev Bell. I actually, in an auction league, in my first Dynasty League, we talked about how I first started. We just got done with our free agency auction, and we're at the point where free agents are going to cost more because the rookie salary is kind of becoming more of the norm because the league's been together since 2009. So yeah, I spent $50 on Lev Bell, and I slapped a year on him because heck, if I can get an RB2, RB3 for 1 year, in a year with COVID, that's I'm all about that because you're going to need to use him in a pinch. Yeah. He's a guy that's going to be safe. He's going to get 6 catches a game, probably like 40 yards a game. Hopefully gets a touchdown, but he's also going to have that rushing. I mean, even if it's 20 carries for 60 yards, I mean, you're getting 12 points from a running back, and that's not all bad in a year like this year when you need depth. And so if you can get Lev Bell, who I still think has potential, then the potential to be an RB and a high end RB2, yeah, give me that for a second round, because like we keep talking about, I mean, are you going to find a player like that in the second round next year? Are you that confident?
Absolutely not.
You got to remember that in trades is these picks are going to have players' names on them. People were scared to give a late first. Now, Keyshawn Vaughn, a lot of people like, but he was 112 in a lot of leagues. Are you comfortable saying like, okay, I would have kept Keyshawn Vaughn over Todd Gurley or Lev Bell? I mean,
Well,
are you asking yourself that in season? I mean, you're probably wishing you would have done the trade.
and with the switch in that dynasty mentality, like we're talking about, I mean, when it first came out, I mean, CeeDee Lamb 5 years ago would have been considered up at the top of that, in those same breath as those running backs because the way people looked at things. But the running backs get pushed up. I mean, there is situations where I'm seeing Keyshawn Vaughn go over Jerry Jeudy, and they're moving into that situation, and it's just like, oh yeah, it makes me cringe big time. I mean, I can't even look at it. But you understand what I'm saying is like you guys are talking about. We're talking about buying production from a running back, and I was in an auction league. I got Lev Bell at $1,500. I got him for $60. I'm comfortable. He's my RB4. You throw him in there at flex on some weeks. You have him as a little bit of depth, and with COVID, that's going to be huge.
So there's a player that you do have on this list that we're going to mention that I would take over everybody.
Yeah.
And that is Singletary.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, Singletary has the youth, and he has the production from last year. He has everything. So you want to say something, so I'll let you.
No, I was breaking. Those were the veterans, and it's Connor, David Johnson, same kind of thing. Those guys, they're a little bit long in the tooth. You're not going to get much more than a year here.
Yeah.
But the other guys, and I changed it up a little bit. Singletary, Montgomery, and Kareem Hunt. Those are guys that you can buy for a late first. I know you love Singletary. I made a trade to, but by the way, Madison ends up being the starter like right after, or the Dalvin Cook holdout comes out right afterwards. But, you and I made that deal. What was it? Chris Godwin for Cup, Madison, and
Singletary. And I needed depth. My team was very, very upper tier friendly. Like I had like 2 players at each position. At running back, I think I had 1. I had Cook, and then everywhere else it's like 1 player, and then I'm pretty much hoping. So when you got when the COVID thing started to get more real, and my thought for my leagues is I like depth. I mean, I may not have these studs, but if I can get depth at a position like a running back or even receiver, where you can start receivers and still get 16 points from them weekly, and you're not getting those boom games, but I mean, you're still getting an even spread of 16 points. I mean, I'm all about that this year. So yeah, doing that trade, Singletary to me, Zach Moss is a huge thing for everybody else. Not so much me. I do think he will vulture touchdowns, but I think Singletary is 1,000-yard rusher easily. Behind that offensive line and that offense, he's easily 1,000-yard rusher.
Well, and there were games last year where, I mean, he ran for over 5 yards per carry on the season.
Yeah.
And there were games where you'd see he'd have 70 yards, but he didn't touch the ball in the first half.
Yeah, like 5 touches or something like that.
He ends up, and I mean, he did the most there. And people are acting like because Zach Moss got drafted there that we need to drop him down. And, in that particular deal, I traded him because I was trying to go from depth to a little bit more of a stronger, because I feel like I'm a contender. But Singletary is definitely worth a late first, and I'm seeing people buy him for that. What about David Montgomery? David Montgomery lost a lot of weight here. He got shredded, and this is the kind of year where
that's what you like to see. Yeah,
this is the post-hype sleeper. Last year we saw a couple of videos and everybody bumped David Montgomery way up. Now he's working out with the footwork guru. He's going to get, I mean, he had 242 carries last year, 25 receptions. He's probably the cheapest guy you can get that's guaranteed 240, 250 touches, because there is not a lot there in Chicago, but it is a boring offense.
Yeah. So Montgomery, he's a talented guy. I won't say very talented, but he's a talented guy. The issue with Montgomery is he's got to break through the offensive line before he can break through tackle, because I mean, the offensive line was terrible and they needed to get better. That offense is terrible. And I hope Nick Foles starts, because Allen Robinson needs a savior for once in his life, and Anthony Miller and I mean, Cole Kmet, because he's going to tear it up when he gets a chance. But Montgomery, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I don't think it was the footwork he needed to work on. I mean, he's a very shifty player. He's got sweet feet through the hole, and He's a guy that can catch the ball at the backfield, and I love. I this is the first time I actually heard of him losing weight, and I love that for a running back of his style.
Yeah, he cut his
Like,
body fat down in half. I mean, I think it was from 16% down to 8. So he's trying to get a little bit quicker and trying to, be able to burst through those holes.
yeah,
Man,
and
when
that
you
was
talk,
the issue with this tape. And what I saw on tape last year, and the reason why Miles Sanders was higher is because he didn't have that initial burst. When you get the ball, you want to see a running back see the hole he wants and go through it. Like we talked about with Freeman. Freeman was really good at that. Like he had great vision. Once he saw where he wanted to go, he took off. Like it was like you could snap your fingers and he was already 5 yards past the line. That's what you need as a running back. And I think Montgomery had that initial burst. So if he fixed that, I would love to buy Montgomery. I mean, I don't own him anywhere.
no, me neither.
And I mean, if you can get him for an early second, that's great value because he will get the touches. Cohen will still get his in the passing game, but if that offense can kind of change their identity and be just better, I mean, Montgomery should be better himself.
Yeah, and we're trying to free Allen Robinson. My first episode was underrated wide receivers, and there is nobody more underrated in value than Allen Robinson. I talked on, I was on P2W the other day, and I was talking about has Brandon Cooks. He went from he goes from Drew Brees to Tom Brady to Jared Goff to now Deshaun Watson, and we're like, man, what if Allen Robinson got this? He goes from Blake Bortles to Mitch Trubisky. And it's like Allen Robinson, when you and I first started, was the man. He was a first round startup in the slop time, and he's just such a good wide receiver, and he deserves better than what he's getting. But
I should go bust up my Jacksonville Jaguar Allen Robinson jersey because he was the guy that, I mean, Matt Harmon, he was on Robinson before anybody, but when I saw him play at Penn State, I said, this guy is going to be somebody I'm going to get in the second round everywhere. And I think I had 70% ownership back when we started. And I traded Emmanuel Sanders straight up for him in a league, and people thought I was crazy. And then the next year he blew up for 1,414.
His sophomore year was nuts. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, he's just been unlucky, but man, I think he's one of the most talented receivers in the league. And yeah, if he can just get a quarterback, say, I don't know, next year, he's still only 27 years old. He'll be 28 in the season, but that's still prime receiver years, and I still think he's got a lot of football to play. So,
according to 28 on Twitter, you're ancient. And I don't even want to say what my age is, but wide receiver values just keep dropping in that, and it's a trend where I'm willing to buy some of those guys for contenders because you're getting a discount.
Yeah, give me Julio.
Absolutely.
For a late first.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last guy on here is Ronald Jones, and he's very polarizing as well. A little bit of a post-heist sleeper, but he's starting to get a little bit more play here now. Obviously Keyshawn Vaughn, missing time. Do you like Ronald Jones? Is he worth a second in your opinion? I mean, obviously you're not paying a first for him. Some of the guys in my listener league are like all about Ronald Jones, and they feel like this is his year, but he did have 700 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. What do you think of Ronald Jones?
It's funny because everybody probably knows that I loved Ronald Jones his rookie year and the following year, but his price was so good then. Now, I don't like the route he's going with his career. He's ganged. He's like 225 now. I'm not a fan of that. What I liked about Rojo was his athleticism, his speed, his explosiveness, and honestly, if you gang – he's probably gained 25 pounds since entering the league. If you gain that much weight, you're losing a lot of that. And if you're losing a lot of that, even from what I saw last year, he didn't have that juice that he had in college, that other gear. And I'm not liking the route he's going. So I'm actually off of Rojo, which is insane for me to say because I was buying all of it. I mean, if he's 215, I'm more happy with that weight, but the fact that he's above 220 playing at that weight when he looked like he could not carry 220 when he came into the league, like he looked like a guy that's what he is. He's 205 and that's the highest he's getting. But man, if he's 225, I just don't know. I don't know how he's going to play with his style that he played in college.
Some guys that put on that weight and it's like it was necessary. And one guy I know you're big on this year, and I know we're switching to wide receiver here a little bit, but Hollywood Brown, I mean, put on 23 pounds of muscle. And I was listening today about his workout regimen and how much, food and protein he's taking in and everything like that.
His butt.
he's still running 4.3. And I'm all about buying those wide receiver ones as your wide receiver 3 on your team. I know you've been buying him up a little bit. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about, what you're thinking of Hollywood Brown?
I mean, just listening to smart people and looking at reception perception. Matt Harmon knows what he's talking about with receivers, and looking at his reception perception, I mean, it's green everywhere. The guy ran crisp routes. He was winning everywhere. He's a guy that is comparable to Tyreek Hill, but he just doesn't have the size. Tyreek Hill's a guy that is just built so thick for his size.
Yeah, that's the thing with Brown is now seeing pictures of him now with that extra 23 pounds, he came into the league at like 160, 165.
Yeah, and he dropped down to 140-ish. And that you can't play at that in the NFL.
And he was, if you take those first 4 games, a lot of these younger undersized receivers, they start out hot because they're fresh and their legs are still good. And I feel like, the way he started, if those first 4 games, you extrapolate that out, you're looking at 64 receptions, over 1,000 yards, over 10 touchdowns. And that's the kind of ceiling that he has. But he was undersized and he got banged up and he played injured most of the year. And I feel like if he stays healthy, sky's the limit for a guy like that in that offense.
And the thing is I know we talk bad about Antonio Brown and kind of where he's going, but if he's got the work regimen as Antonio Brown used to have when he was with Pittsburgh, that's what you want to see in a receiver that just wants to be better, wants to be the best. And you see that with Hollywood. You see a guy that is gaining 23 pounds of muscle is so difficult, and
it's
just
ridiculous.
He's pretty much putting everything he has into his career right now. And that's what you want to see. I'm all about it. He's got great hands. I mean, you watched a video on Twitter of him burling Marlon Humphrey, who's a fantastic corner. I mean, he fooled him. And I said, reception perception shows he's a fantastic route runner. And that's what I like to see out of a player. And Lamar Jackson, hopefully he gets better as a thrower every year going forward. So yeah, Hollywood is a guy I'm buying.
Yeah, and that's an area of a guy putting on weight and it being positive. And running backs, it's very difficult to kind of do those kind of things. I want to try to keep you close to that hour mark, and I really appreciate you coming on here. Why don't you give the listeners one guy outside the top 40 running backs who's kind of a guy that you're going to plant your flag on that could be a league winner for somebody?
Oh God, that's tough. Alexander Madison looked really good in camp from what I've seen. He looks like he's lost a little weight and he looks explosive, but I wouldn't go there because I think Cook is going to get a ton of carries. I like Darrington Evans a lot. If he gets any pass catching work, I think they're going to see something special. And he's a guy that could just pretty much take all the pass catching away from Derrick Henry. And I mean, he could get 50 catches because Tannehill loves that.
They've been missing that too. I mean, Tennessee's been missing that pass catching running back. I love it. Thanks again for coming on. I appreciate it. I respect you. You're one of the premier people in the industry. So I appreciate you taking that time. Why don't you tell everybody, where they can find you, anything that you got, going on here. And,
you can find me at dynastyhappyhour.com and on Twitter at DHH_Tyler. We got the pod. We got a bunch of pods coming. A lot of good content from you and the writers. I mean, it's insane how the switch has flipped. I mean, we were in early July, and people were struggling with content. Then it's like you kind of bring in a new guy, and then the new guy starts firing some up, and then it kind of promotes within, like, hey, we can do this. Let's start writing. Hey, this article had this. I want to write about the opposite player on the opposite side of the field. And you just and you grow together, and that's what's awesome to see in our group at Dynasty Happy Hour is just, our group got bigger, but it got better, and it made everybody who's in the group better. And I mean, people are just firing at all cylinders there, and it's amazing to see. It leaves me flabbergasted a little bit.
Yeah, that new blood in there. I mean, obviously, so many new guys have joined in there, but they're putting out great content and they're excited to put it out there. I mean, you see it in the group chat. They're trying to push it, and we're talking about all kinds of new different things. So it's exciting things going on at Dynasty Happy Hour. You guys should check them out, dynastyhappyhour.com. And thanks again, Tyler, for coming on. Really appreciate it. You guys, thanks again for tuning in to the Dynasty Dad Podcast. Enjoy the process. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.